Hello, so this is going to be a quick blog. My use case is the blog website for this class and my final project. I created a video earlier, ended up being like over 30 minutes long, so I'm going to go really quickly so I can cut time. Starting with a 3-tier architecture, presentation layer, I used HTML templates and CSS styling. The CSS styling is not my own. I just wanted to add an extra layer to make it look cleaner, but everything else was something I created using my own data and inputs. And it's more about the functionality of the project itself, as that's what we really care about. Next is the application layer. The application layer is unique. What I did was I used Django, which is a popular framework. The reason I use Django is because it's really high level and easy to use. It's got good scalability, it's got security. Django has a lot of built-in features like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, defense, etc. It's got a really good authentication and authorization system, which I will show you later. It's got a really good object relational mapping, which is an easy way to interact with my database. And it's a very large, wide community support. Next, for the data tier, I used a SQLite database management system. Django's models can handle interactions with that database system, including CRUD, which is creating, reading, updating, and deleting data very well. It's very fast and versatile, and that's the reason I used it. Next is normalization. So normalizations would use at least, for many websites, needs to have at least third nominal form, which requires non-key attributes in tables that are functionally dependent on the primary key, and no transitive dependencies between non-key attributes. In my example, I have tables that contain posts, users, and groups. Each of them would have a primary key and attributes of each final table that would be defined in a normalized manner. Again, other tables like posts have similar sort of styles, and I can show this and demonstrate all of this in through my ER diagram later on. Next, integrity enforcement. It's an important aspect of database management, and it can be used on my blog website. Some examples of how I show integrity enforcement. I will demonstrate this in my user interface demo, where I can demonstrate how certain users, if you are logged into your account, you are not allowed to update or delete another person's or user's posts. Other ways you can do this is by defining data types. You can define certain data types as integer, so to make sure that only integers are supported in that data field, such as user's author the author ID or the post ID can only be numeric values, and no other value can be stored there. Likewise, you can use constraints using like unique and check constraint, which I will show in my ER diagram that I've inputted. The use of foreign keys can be used to link data between tables and based on their common columns. Enforcing foreign key relationship SQLite ensures that data is consistent throughout multiple tables in the database. My ER diagram shows this very well. I keep saying that over and over, and you will see and make that conclusion on your own. Use of transactions. Transactions can be used to group multiple database operations into a single unit of work. Transactions can be used to ensure that data is only modified in a consistent and controlled manner, and that any errors or exceptions are handled appropriately. Okay. So, isolation level. The isolation level used in the website, in my website, is read committed. It is the most suitable for my blog website because this website in particular isn't going to get any traffic, high levels of traffic. So this level is pretty good at providing a good balance between data consistency and concurrency, and allows transactions to make changes made by other transactions that have already been committed. See those changes, I mean. If I had higher levels of concurrency or higher levels of consistent traffic, then it would be beneficial to go to a higher isolation level, like serializable or repeated read. So next, these are just optional screenshots. This just shows how you can create your Python Django web development, like how you can start the app and just some virtual environment, installing the packages, and what some of the directories look like when they automatically get populated with the Django framework. So a lot of these files, if someone else is using Django, will be seen in someone else's Django web framework. So I'm going to show you the database and the ER diagram. Oh no, I had to close it out. Well, first I can show you the ER diagram. This is the Django admin log. Every single table here, I have about 13 tables. Each table has a ID, a action, sort of like, which is the primary key. There are two isolated or standalone tables here, Django migrations and sessions, which records whenever a session is created by a user, and this migrations basically updates or changes throughout the entirety of the directories and databases that occur and they're made by the user. And you can see a relation how group ID is the foreign key of integer value in auth group permissions, for example, how that is the primary key in auth group and is also of integer value, and is also the primary key of auth permissions as an ID integer value. And you can see these relations very clearly highlighted in green, or how this is connected to all of these foreign keys are going in and connecting to this, or linking with this primary key of auth user. So this is my ER diagram. If I were to show you the DB browser is a great way that I do open databases, review databases. So going into documents, here we have 13 tables. I have some views and triggers. So, oh no. Well, okay. Since it's really quick, I'm just going to show you what this auth user is. It's got an ID, password, which is hashed and salted, last login field, if it's a super user, which is admin privileges, username, last name, first name, date that they joined, if they're active, if they're a staff privileged user, and if they have an email address or not. So that's just how some of these tables are like. Now, so the next thing I want to discuss is the reports. Just ignore this score. This is just what I have calculated on my own to see what I'd hopefully get. And so some reports that I'll get that I've created that have aggregation. Report 1. So this is the total posts that user total posts by year. So every time a user creates a post, we're going to tally it, and then we're going to organize it by year, from the farthest year to the present. So 2012 has 1 post created, 2023 8 posts were created. The next report that I created shows the total number of posts made by each user. So 2 posts were created by Napoleon, 2 created by the Vlad, 1 by Ahsoka, 1 by Charlemagne, etc., etc. I could also go ahead and go a step further and add this where clause, which would organize it and have a date field, so that we could only see within this date range, which is like 2023 till present day. And yes, here I wrote it acts as a SQLite function and a procedure, and here I'll explain why. So starting off with this function, I created a function which counts the number of posts made by each user, which is basically what this does. And this is the function DDL, so this is the part where I am going to explain what this stuff is, right? So function DDL, so I created a function and it basically does exactly what this does, but the reason I can't execute it, as shown here, we get an error, is because this function So what this function does is it takes the author ID and returns the number of posts written by the user, right? But the create function isn't supported in this version of SQLite because, but according to the web page, the main website, regular SQL scripts are synonymous to using SQLite create functions, as they're no different than if you run the script as shown in my report. Sadly, after I created everything, I didn't realize this version didn't support that, but that's okay. We move on, as I've been told that this is fine as long as I demonstrate that I understand how to create a function, and I've replicated the exact output that this creates without the actual create function, and as defined by the SQLite main web page. So then we go over to procedure.ddl, and I've done the same thing here. I've created a procedure, and what this does is this procedure will then insert a new row into the blog post table with provided values for title, body, and author ID. Now, this SQL, it's not the version itself, but SQLite in general does not support stored versions, so creating a stored procedure DDL is impossible. Again, I've demonstrated I know how to create this using SQL syntax, but I can't create it, so I really can't do anything about this. But after talking to the right people, that should be okay, as long as I've demonstrated my knowledge of creating this. And the next two are the trigger and the view. So I've already created this. There's two triggers created here. If we wanted to look at this, we can look at the view here. And what this view does is it basically, so we can ignore this and focus on create view here. What this view does is that it creates these three fields, which will allow us to look at the username, title, content, and date posted, exactly what you'll see in a normal blog. So I've created 8 different views here, but in reality it's just 2 views. The reason I did that is because if you were to execute this, you couldn't, because this table already exists, because we already created the view, so we would have to have a unique title and it would execute perfectly, so there's no error in the syntax. Next, we have 2 different triggers. We can look at that. This trigger basically updates the number of posts that are created. So every time there's an insertion in the blog post, we update the user auth user table, and then we set post and increment post count by 1 every time there is a unique author ID, or whenever an author creates a post. And then the second trigger does something very similar in the fact that it updates the author user table every time there's an insertion on the user profile, which basically increments the number of users in the database, so we have a tally of that. So that's all of the DDL functions and DDL functions that I've described. It's shown in ER diagram number 7. Finally, we're going to do the UI interface. So I'm in the admin page. I'm logged into it. If we weren't logged in, it would pop up a login page prompting us to add our username and password. The username and password is this is just admin. And then we would go ahead and I'm going to show you how you can also use your CRUD functions, your create, read, update, and delete on the administration page with because you have full administrative access to do so on here, as well as show you how you can do that on the user interface if you were a regular user. But since we have administrative privileges, we can show you by just clicking on the thing. Here we would say delete selected posts, and we could delete it. And we could delete anybody's posts. And this is because I am logged into the admin account. If I wasn't, and I did not have this administrative privilege, first of all, I wouldn't be able to even get into this site without the username and password. So I'm going to show you how you can create a post from here. You can create a random post. Let's call it drones, and then some random data. We can even set the author to whoever we want. I'm going to set it to myself as admin. And then we have our drone post posted here. So if we were to go ahead and go to the main website, we can see this change happen right here. So that's how you could create a post. And if you want to create a post from here, you can go ahead and do that. Say new post, random content, and click post. And then we have the option of delete and things. So that's a really cool function. You can also read this if you like to see why I would need an A. You can pause the video for that. And now I'm going to show you how you can do the update. Updated. I can show you how to update post. Boom. So that shows how we can do that. If we go to another post, as we can see, we can't update another post even though we have admin privileges from the user interface website directly. We can also see the time here, by the way, and that's really good for authentication purposes. We're not allowed to modify or delete other people's posts. Now if you want to delete our post, I can show you that. We have a check. It says, do you want to delete this post? And we don't want to delete it, so we're going to go ahead and click delete. I mean, we do want to delete it, so we click delete, and it's completely gone from our web page, and that's really cool. Yeah, so I showed you how to create a web post, how to update it, how to delete it, and how you can read it. So that demonstrates all of the tables of how we want to do each and everything. Next, I want to show you some authentication and authorization. We have users groups. So I created a group. This group has one thing which it can do is can add groups as a permission. If we wanted to, we can give it other permissions like this. Add it there, save it, and now this group can have these privileges. And users can then be assigned to these groups. So if I wanted to assign Anon to this group, we can click on Anon. We see its username. We see that the password has been hashed with 256 and salted. This is great for integrity enforcement, confidentiality. It was great for integrity enforcement when one user couldn't update or delete another person's post. So that's another demonstration of that. And if we wanted to add Anon to a group, well, first he would have to be not an active user. He could ask to be a staff user and have the staff status. Again, staff status, you can have that. We can assign him that. We can add admin status. We can add a username, first name, last name, email address. And we can see when they last logged in, it's showing that he hasn't logged in now, and the date that they were joined. So then we can go back, we can go to post as well, and if we were to click on the post, let's say blog post, we can delete it from here, and then yes, and that wasn't even our post, this was just a post of someone else. Again, I have admin privileges, which is why I'm allowed to do this. If I wasn't given super user privileges, then I would not be allowed to even be on this site. I'd have to log in with my password and username anyways. So from profiles, we can upload our image or JPEG, and yeah, that's really it. So that's the end of my presentation. It might be 2 videos. Sorry about that.